Hello guys and welcome to another video. My name's Mark, I'm an entrepreneur and property investor, and in today's video we're discussing Dave Ramsey and is he now being proven right? Because basically in the past lots of people on the internet have looked at his advice of living as debt-free as possible and they've sort of laughed at it because in low interest rate times it doesn't really make sense, does it? If you can borrow at like 2 or 3% and you can make money at 10%, well there's a big margin in there, isn't there? There's a lot of safety in those numbers. But as interest rates have started to rise, and today the Bank of England, we're sitting at 4% of the base rate. So if you're looking to borrow on mortgages, for example, it's going to be much higher. You're looking at between 5, 6, 7%. And when it comes to car finance and any sort of unsecured debt, the rates are much, much higher. I remember being able to get an unsecured loan about 3.5% a year ago. Today, I'll be looking at 9 to 10%, I'm sure. Today, what we want to discuss is Dave Ramsey right in the long run? Ultimately, are you better off having very little debt? And I've always said this, 9 out of 10 people that are going to be better off following this sort of approach. Because for a lot of people, life does get in the way, and following a simple plan which is laid out in front of you will be best. Now, for a few more people, some similar to myself who are more entrepreneurial, can think a little bit more outside the box, can delay gratification, don't need their money tied up in a retirement account in order to not spend it. Those sort of people, they can take a different approach. But I've always said for 9 out of 10 people, this sort of approach is going to be best. So today, what I wanted to do is just go through what the 7 baby steps that Dave Ramsey teaches are, see if any of that can be applicable to everybody, because number one, having £1,000 available to you in an emergency fund just makes sense, right? If you've got an emergency, you should be able to get your hands on £1,000. Now, I would go one step further and say for me, I've got 5 credit cards which have got 0 balance on them, and between those 5 I could probably borrow just over £100,000. In fact, I know I can borrow more than 100,000. I know on one of them the limit's about 60, 70,000. So I've got an emergency fund that's not necessarily cash liquid, but I can get my hands on it very, very quickly. And maybe that's a more sophisticated way of looking at it. In the case of an emergency, £1,000 might not cut it. For me, maybe it might be a £10,000 emergency. However, my income and the money that I generate from my properties and from my investments and from my businesses, you got to remember I've got £3.5 million of property, but Dave Ramsey would hate the fact that I've got £1.4 million worth of debt on it, So I have got the debt side as well. But ultimately, £1,000 in an emergency fund, I think every responsible adult should be able to get their hands on £1,000 if they need to. So for me, that's an obvious thing. Number 2, pay off debt snowball style. Now what snowball style is essentially listing your debts lowest to highest. And the reason is mentally, it means that you start ticking them off quicker and you can get through them faster. Now, it's not mathematically the quickest way. Mathematically, the quickest way and the cheapest way would be to pay off the largest APR first, the largest interest rate first. But mentally, Dave Ramsey says that snowball style works for most people. And I'll trust him on this. Ultimately, I don't think there's only that much difference. And I know humans are more psychological than they are mathematical. They're more emotional than they are logical. So I completely accept that snowball style is probably the right way. So if you're looking to pay off your debt and you've got £100 at 5% and you've got £1,000 at 10% and you've got £10,000 at 11%, well, that's the order that you'd pay them off at. You'd pay them off at £100 paid off first, £1,000 next, and then you'd attack the last one at the end. And mathematically, we all know that it doesn't make any sense. It would be cheaper to attack the one with the highest APR first. But psychologically, emotionally, the fact that you're making big headway quicker and you can then roll the money that you were paying that debt off into the next one tends to mean that people, according to Dave Ramsey, and I can completely agree with this research, I completely can accept it, will then roll that money through and get excited about the next thing. It's sort of bite-sized pieces, isn't it? It would take you much longer to make an inroad into that. You'd probably get bored, you'd probably feel a little bit deflated, whereas you can tick that off maybe in a week. So pay off debt snowball style. Number 3 on his list of baby steps is to have 3 to 6 months expenses saved. So whatever your household expenses are, you need to have 3 to 6 months put to one side. And again, quite an admirable task, something that people should be doing. Number 4, invest 15% of income into retirement. And the reason, and he doesn't say this, but I think the reason that he teaches retirement is because it means it's locked away. You can't get your hands on it. So if I was to edit this and use this for someone who's maybe a little bit more entrepreneurial, a little bit more savvy, a little bit more capable of not spending the money, you might say that there's also tax advantages with this, but there are other things that you could do to keep it in a tax advantage way. For example, if you were running a business, you could just leave it in your business account. You could then have a spin-off company. You could have a company that did investing. You could have a holding company where the money moved up to and that bought assets. There's lots of things you could do tax advantage wise. However, the advantage to being able to use it today, rather than having to wait till you're 57, 58, whatever it is in the UK at the moment, it keeps on moving, and ultimately relying on the government to dictate when you can access your money, I think for most people who are a little bit more savvy, they can probably not lock it up. But I accept for 9 out of 10, it's probably best. The next one is save for children's college. Again, something that I've been doing anyway. I've got my children's ISAs and I've made sure that I've been putting enough money in there so that they can either go to university, buy their first house, whatever it is that they want to do. I personally think that college, or university as it's called in the UK, is a little bit of a scam. I don't think it holds the same value that it used to. I would rather that my children took that money. They're probably going to have about 50, 60,000 pounds each. I would hope that they would be able to invest that money and start to make money from the money. If they feel that they want to go to college or university and get a skill that's going to help better their future, great. I will support them in whatever their endeavour is. But me, I know people have come out with 80, 90, 100,000 pounds worth of debt after doing a master's in a creative field, and they didn't necessarily need to. They could have just learned all the skills from YouTube, and this is them telling me that as well. They could have learned the skills from YouTube and started practicing it from there. And it hasn't meant that they could go out and get a 100 grand job at the end of it. It's the creative field. There's a huge amount of people competing for those jobs. The salaries are drive down. So number 6, pay off home early. Again, probably everybody's single biggest expense, either your rent or your mortgage. And number 7, build wealth and give generously. So these are the baby steps. And what we're doing today is we're going to talk about why this may well now be right. And we're talking really about interest rates, aren't we? Whereas before, you could borrow, certainly for your mortgage, for example, we were getting like 1.6% on a fixed rate for 5 years. I mean, those days are long gone. And I'll do another video very shortly about what I believe the best mortgage product on the market is right now. I'll talk about that in detail. But 1.6% is not happening. 1.6% is now more like 5.5%. And that means that mortgages are becoming much more expensive. Here's the one thing I would say. For 9 out of 10 people, I've always said this would be right. I've always said that I believe that this, for 9 out of 10 people, is a safe plan that will mean in your retirement years between 50 and 80, you are going to become wealthy. There's no question. If you invest 15% of your money into retirement accounts, completely tax-free, it grows tax-free, regardless of your salary, regardless of where you are on the income scale. And if you do that consistently for your entire life, you are going to be wealthy as long as you're using index funds, low fees, all those sort of things. There's no question. But for 10% of people, they can do more. They can be more. The thing you can't make any more of is time. You can make more money. So for me, what it means that if interest rates rise, well, my margin has to rise. The cost of capital's increased. So if the cost of capital's increased, the price of the end product has to increase. So we're seeing that play out right now in the housing market. You know, mortgages have gone up. Which way have rents gone? They've gone up, of course, because landlords need to cover the additional expense and the tenants have to pay for it. If you look at maybe, for example, something really simple like a Big Mac or a chocolate bar, anything that you buy on a daily basis, well, the price of all the ingredients have gone up. So guess what? The price of the product has also gone up. And this all starts around the cost of capital. The cost of capital, the cost of labour, the cost of materials, all those things have increased. Therefore, the price has to go up in order to retain margin. So I think the situation hasn't really changed, but it has changed. You know, we've always had to build in a margin. It's just the margin today has to be different to the margin before because the cost of capital's changed. So I don't think anything in my mind has really changed. And I would still say to 9 out of 10 people, maybe 7 out of 10 people watching this video, because you're a certain type of person if you're consuming my content. This is going to be the plan for 7 out of 10 people. Maybe you prefer property over a retirement income. Maybe you prefer having credit cards that could cover this and using that money to invest in more income, using property as a vehicle. You know, there's lots of ways that you can hash this around a little bit. But I think for most people, this sort of thing, low debt, high income, low debt, low expenses, live below your means, is the right plan. For 3 out of 10 people watching this, you can do more. You can build a business. You can make more money. You can't make any more time. And if you can make more money, you've got to borrow money. And that means you've got to borrow money at a more expensive rate in order to get access to the capital to allow you to grow your businesses, your portfolios, whatever it is you're doing. You just need to make sure that the pricing allows you to do that. So guys, that's my take on it. If you like this sort of content, I didn't ask for a like at the beginning of the video. Give it a big like, subscribe if you haven't already. Remember, we've got our subscriber dividend portfolio sitting at £9,500 at the moment. Another £2 grand in this month. As I said, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Cheers, guys.